How to launch a construction company. That is today's topic with my guest, Peter Worhunsky. He is the president and CEO of Live Oak, a construction company that he started with partners in 2019. Peter is an industry veteran with over 20 years of experience, and we have a very interesting conversation about what led up to his decision to launch his company, what he's learned as a result of that launch, how he's navigated through the challenges of COVID. We also talk about the fundamental mindset that he has to building a long-term business that he learned from observing other legacy construction companies like Kiewit and McCarthy who have built long-term successful businesses. So Peter is just starting the journey, but I wanted to have him on the show because he's very thoughtful and insightful and very honest about the challenges associated with starting a construction company. I think you'll enjoy this very much. You're going to get some keys and some tips for actually running your business, even if you're not actually starting a construction company. And you'll also get some deep insights into the mindset that you need to have to be a successful CEO of your construction business. So like I always say, enjoy my conversation with Peter. Give us any feedback. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any suggestions about guests or topics. And thank you for listening today to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Peter, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be back. It's been a couple of years since we've done this, and I've listened to the podcast pretty regularly, and I just wanted to start by saying thank you for doing it. You've done a really good thing for our industry with this podcast.
Thank you. I actually consider it a great privilege to be able to do it, and I'm kind of amazed by the impact it's had. But it's been very enjoyable for me as well. It's interesting. The last time we chatted, you were in one stage of your career, and since then there's been quite a bit of change. You recently, a couple of years ago, launched your own construction company.
I did. Yeah. So when we last spoke, I was an executive and a minority shareholder at a larger company that was established. And almost about 2 years ago to the day, I made the decision to launch a business. And I'm about 18 months into this journey.
Early days, to say the least. But I appreciate you coming on the show just to discuss, this journey that you're on. Why did you want to start your own company?
It was, I grew up in a construction family. So I saw my dad run a construction business, and there was a business started by my grandfather. So it was something that was just kind of normal to me. It was normal to me to see a business owner managing a company. So it had always been a goal of mine, and it had always been something that I just saw as kind of a regular course of my career. I wasn't fixed on the idea of starting a company. I thought that maybe I could go a different route and take over an established company or work my way up at a larger organization. So the idea to start from scratch is something that kind of happened quickly, but being in the position to be managing a business is something that I was interested in for a long time.
Okay, so take us through a little bit from the idea of that thought where it was something you were familiar with, it was part of your growing up. What process did you have to go through to get from the idea from the idea itself to getting into action and actually starting?
It was funny. It was like a long process, and then the decision was sort of all of a sudden. So it was a weird way that it happened. The impetus of this it probably started a couple of years before I made the decision to do it. And in my previous career, we were focused on doing large public works projects, and that had always been a goal of mine. I wanted to do big jobs and big high profile jobs. And the market for those projects was just terrible. And you look back in the news, you can see there was a lot of, larger companies that just got out of that space. The company that I was at was trying to get into it. And I just had a real strategic sense of misdirection. And I was concerned that we were chasing a goal that wasn't good. And so I started to look for ways to diversify the business that I was at. And that is really what began the process of ending up to where we were now. And so I got to a place where I knew that we needed to make a market change. I wasn't having any luck doing it where I was. I also wasn't having any luck moving sort of my position forward in the business. And sort of just on a whim or in a very quick way, I realized that I needed to do something different. And really, I was going to have to make this happen on my own.
Okay. So what was the first step that you took?
Well, the first step was in this business was to just explore the markets that we're in. So the way that, and this business isn't just me. I mean, there's a team that founded this, and there's lots of people that are making the same kind of sacrifices I am. So that's the first important thing to know, because the relationships that allowed for that, those began years before we even started thinking about this. So, with all that in the background, the first step was, let's say that, now the decision is made to go and launch the startup. I really started looking at financing this business. Mm-hmm. And I looked at what I didn't know. And I went out and tried to find people who could help me. I've been far enough into my career to know that I don't know everything. And I have to get outside and I have to talk to people like you and others that can help me make decisions and more importantly, make the right decisions. So it started there. It started with finding somebody to help me financially get this business going.
So it's interesting because you talked about the relationships that you had previously, which helped you to launch the business. And as you were cultivating those relationships, were you consciously thinking about, these could be potentially future business partners? How did you approach that?
It's funny. So there's a group of people that are part of the team that founded this business that come from a company that I worked at, over 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was a business that I thought, at that stage, I saw it as a business that potentially that I could rise to the senior ranks and maybe be part of the management team one day. And it didn't work out. So, a lot of these people they knew me when I was a project engineer, or, in some cases, even just an intern there. And was I thinking about them as potential business partners at the time? Not like this, no.
Right.
But the baseline was there, and the groundwork was formed that when this all came together, we've known each other for a really long time.
What things were you consciously looking for in business partners as you began to think about launching your current company?
Well, I mean, the first thing was that we knew each other, we trusted each other.
Right.
And I think that's critical. There's other, and the way this came together, we came together in two different markets. So when we originally launched Live Oak, it was to go after work in the utility sector. And as we were launching that business, the opportunity came to bring a heavy civil operation into this, which we did. And that heavy civil operation was with the people that I'd known. And when it came together, it wasn't something that was planned. It was something that was just a decision like, hey, we're going, I'm starting this utility business. There's an opportunity to bring you guys in. We're going to do something different. And all of a sudden we were on two platforms from the beginning.
That's interesting. So when it came to making that decision to go into another market, was that driven based on the relationships that you had that you knew you could leverage in order to go into the market? Did that give you confidence to approach that new market when the opportunity came up?
So the relationships that I had developed in the new market were very new. I mean, it was with people that I had just started to get to know over the course of a few months. And really I guess it was me looking outside at the market, the utility space, and also just sort of relying on my judgment gained through experience of being in the industry to sort of get to know people and know, like, are these good people that we want to work with?
Right.
And really that's what I used.
Interesting. Let me just take you back a bit, because you mentioned a couple of times being involved in companies, thinking about, well, perhaps I could rise into senior leadership in these companies, and that not happening. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, not happening at the pace that I wanted it to, or in the direction that I wanted it to.
Okay, so this is slightly off the topic, but let's say you were sitting down with the CEO of an established construction company, and he or she was sharing with you, hey, I've got all these up and comers that are ambitious. They perhaps want to participate in the business. Knowing what you know, Peter, from your experience of being in a variety of businesses, what might a construction company CEO or president do, or how should they be thinking in terms of retaining some of that talent, and perhaps not even losing them to doing something that you did, which is to start your own business? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so specific. It's going to be really based on where the company is going and who the individuals are. I think, I think in some cases you're going to lose them anyways. The timing's not going to be right.
Yes.
The goals are going to be different. There's nothing that you can do. But I think for the ones that are there, that are committed, where the timing is right and the alignment is there, I think giving them as clear of a path as you can and a realistic expectation of how this would go. And then also just providing some support in their growth and say, look, this is, we need people to run this business after us, the current leadership. And, you look like you're someone who has this potential, but we need to get you from here to there.
Yeah.
And so let's start working on it.
Yeah. So it's interesting because sometimes circumstances just are what they are and there isn't the opportunity. And so, like you said, you may even lose them, even if you do all of the above.
Yeah.
So to speak. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I get that. So let me just go to the personal side a little bit as you were starting the business. Obviously, starting a construction company is not like just launching, some simple business. It's a complex thing. There's risk involved. Obviously, there's responsibilities that you have. How did you go through the process of the personal process of talking to your family and discussing this with your wife in terms of going up to the launch of the business?
Yeah. So it was something that she sort of knew this about me from the time that we met. So there was no surprise that we were going to go in this direction. So by the time we jumped, she'd been hearing this nonsense for a decade. The other thing that was helpful was her dad was a small contractor. And so she also kind of grew up around this. And so she sort of knew the game. And, it was funny. She was actually, when I knew that I needed to do this and I wasn't 100% there. And what really forced the decision was when we were in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. We had to move to the Central Coast of California to start this business. And what really forced the start was actually my wife saying, look, it's May right now. If you're going to start this business and we're going to move the kids and put them in school, we have to list the house now. So are we listing the house now? What are we doing?
Interesting.
And that was the decision point. Actually came down to that. It's like, yeah, let's do it. We put our house on the market. Here we go.
It's very interesting there. So just take us to that moment of decision, the decision when you sort of, crossed the Rubicon. You went from being an employee to being a business owner. What was that period of time like? How did you handle that yourself?
It was just kind of one step at a time, because you're walking into this fog. Yes. And you have a goal, you have a vision of where you're going, but there's so much uncertainty and variability, and there's so much that you don't know. And if you sit around and wait, you're never going to go. So you just sort of walk into the risk.
Yes.
A little bit at a time. And that's what I started doing.
Excellent. So start us through that process. You launched the business. What were some of the immediate obstacles that you came across when you launched the business?
It depends at what stage. So immediately, like right up front, like let's say before I had anybody who was even working here and I was still living in the Bay Area, I knew from being in the industry for, over 20 years, I knew the challenges of the business. And obviously the challenge for a new company and a lot of construction companies is just financing this. Yep. And so that was the first thing that I started on. All right, I don't have enough money to really make this go. I don't know how to work with banks. I don't know how to raise capital. I got to start talking to people that can help me do that.
Excellent. And as you did that, what was one of the things that you learned about the financial aspect of it that you didn't know that has been really helpful to you?
What's been helpful to see, and so we don't have outside investors. This is our own money making this work, and we have bank financing. Mm-hmm. So my experience is just in terms of working with banks, it's surprising how important it is for people to trust you.
Yep.
it's a big deal. And I also think, and these are just people that you're working with for the first time, you have to come off as trustworthy. And also, we invested a lot up front. I had the first person that I started working with for this was a fractional CFO.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a gentleman that just started helping me. At the beginning, it was pro bono, and I couldn't believe it. And we'd meet in a public library, and we'd get on a whiteboard and start just sketching out financial models by hand. How much revenue? What are the expenses? What does the cash flow look like? And then from there, a business plan was developed, and I invested money on getting a good business plan done by consultants that looked good. And so when it came time to sit down with the bank and ask for our financing, I felt like we were miles ahead of a lot of their other customers because we had a plan that addressed their typical questions. I was there with someone that spoke their language, and we just looked ready to go. And it was very helpful.
That's interesting. So was the business plan done for the benefit of the bank, or was there some benefit to you as well?
It was. There was certainly benefit to the business for us to go through that process. But the plan itself and the contents of the plan, there were certain portions of it that were specifically done to address the things that banks are typically working. And this is to go out and get SBA financing.
Sure.
And so there's things that banks are looking for and the SBA is looking for in these applications. And so our plan had that built in because we knew what they were looking for, and we proactively did it. So there were no questions.
Okay, so the benefit of having that plan is that it answered the questions for the bank and the SBA so that you could kind of smooth the obstacles to getting the financing you were looking for.
Yeah, and then it also forced just a rigor around the planning and the startup of the business because you had to think it through and answer the questions. Who are the customers? What are the revenue? What are the expenses? Who's the team? How much are you paying them? What does this growth rate look like? Can you finance the growth? You're going to get a certain amount of money now. Well, you're going to need more in how many years, and how's that going to work? And it was a great process.
That's great. So as you look back on that process, what's changed, if anything, significantly about the plan that you put together and where you are now as a business?
Well, COVID changed a lot. So that really disrupted us.
Yes.
I know it impacted people in construction differently. For a business that was just starting, because we literally earned our first revenue in a nominal amount of revenue at the tail end of 19, and so we're just getting the business started, and then all of a sudden COVID happens.
Wow!
At that point, it was a scramble. So obviously that wasn't in the plan. But even if it had not happened, and we sort of knew this going in. There's this funny dichotomy that I'm sort of learning about as you're starting a business. You have to have a plan and you have to have goals, and you have to be able to step through this. But at the same time, you have to be hyper opportunistic about what's immediately in front of you. If you're too focused on what's down the road, you're never going to get anywhere. And if you're too focused on what's immediately in front of you, you're never going to get down the road. So somehow it's strange, but you have to do both.
Okay, so let's explore that. Give me an example of what you mean by being hyper opportunistic while keeping your eye on the long-term goal. Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, so we have a third business now in the traffic control and safety space, and it was something that was never on our radar screen. It was an idea that was brought to us by a customer who was exploring this business for themselves. And, as big construction guys, we sort of looked at it and didn't, said, this is an easy business. This isn't sophisticated enough for us. But when we really got into it and we looked at it as a startup, we saw, hey, this is actually a really good thing. And so we made the decision to start exploring it, and then COVID hits. And so we're sitting around in June, July, a few months into COVID. Our customer partners out because the world shut down,
right?
And our fractional CFO asked the question, what's to prevent us from starting this business right now or on our own?
Right.
We have people, we've got equipment, let's do it. And so we started the business. We started a traffic control business in the middle of COVID, and it put some guys to work. It put some equipment to work, and it's slowly built into something now that's a really good add-on to what we've developed. And it sort of meets our longer term strategy and vision in terms of what we're trying to build for an organization. But man, that whole market was nowhere near our radar screen when we found out about it.
How does it meet that longer term vision?
It's I'm a kind of a construction geek, if you will, and a student of construction history. And so you look back at, in my own sort of research and just knowledge of the business, so you go back and you look at the companies that are just enduring great companies in this space, and they share a lot in common. And there's different mixes of what people build, but in general, this is what I see. The businesses are well diversified, so they're not. And these are businesses at scale. I'm talking about businesses at scale, not little ones. So the businesses at scale.
Hold on. Which ones you give me one or two that you're thinking of in your mind right now?
Kiewit.
Okay.
McCarthy, Bechtel.
Okay.
There's some examples of some that had that and failed, like Morrison Knudsen.
Yep.
So the businesses were diversified.
Yep.
They were in different markets and different regions, and they were really focused on the business of construction. They weren't fixed on, well, this is what we build. We move dirt, or we put pipe in the ground, or we do HVAC. I think they saw themselves more as construction businessmen.
Very good.
And then they were also mobile. So they didn't, and this actually comes from something that I read that was, I think that it's 50 years old now, and it was from a president of MK. Don't get stuck in a bad market. So they built the organization where they never got, if they were in a market that failed, they were out of the market. They had an organization that was mobile. And then
are you talking about a geographic market specifically?
Both.
Or vertical market?
Geographic or what you're building.
Yep.
And then the third thing was just they were very focused on risk management. That's sort of the third pillar of this. And so when we kind of look out in the future of what we're trying to build at Live Oak, we're trying to build an organization that can do that.
Okay.
And we're diverse, we're mobile, and we're very good at de-risking the business. So, we have targets in terms of what we want our project and company portfolios to look like. And then we're trying to build a business that can move and that's not going to get stuck.
Okay, let's explore this a little bit more. I think for one, it's very interesting that as you're starting the business, it's not just from the perspective of, man, I could do it better than that guy, and I'm just going to go out and get a project and build it and see what happens. You're coming at it from a higher level, so to speak, in terms of your thinking. So diversification, be mobile, that is, don't get stuck in a bad market, geographic or vertical, and then risk management. Tell me a little bit more about risk management, your perspective on that. How do you approach that? What do you look for? What do you emphasize?
Well, at this stage, because we're new, and our biggest challenge is financing this, and we have a very lightweight balance sheet for the amount of work that we're trying to do. We cannot do work we can't take a bad project. We can't take on a bad customer. We can't go out and try to do something that we don't know how to do. So our number one risk management tool at this point is just being hyper selective in what projects we choose and what customers we choose to work for.
Take us through how you actually discipline yourself to do that. Because if I'm in your shoes, my default is to say yes. And it sounds like with this risk management, your default is to say maybe or no. Could you take us through how you think through that as a startup CEO?
A lot of the people that we're working for, the customers that we have, or the markets that we're in, we had relationships with them, so we knew them. Mm-hmm. So some of our biggest work was for customers that we did, mm-hmm. Or we have a lot of our volume with customers that we met for the first time after we started. But we knew the space, we knew the people a little bit, and we didn't start off with sort of an all-in bet on them. Mm. We kind of took it step by step, and again, it was very opportunistic. So where it was, if we were going to a customer that we didn't know, we knew that the opportunity was good enough that if things turned bad, we weren't building a job that started on the razor's edge. We had some margin of safety in it.
Okay. So that's interesting for you to think about, is that if you are, because someone might be saying, well, I'm getting into a new market, or I'm starting my business and I don't know every customer. And that's where you look at the project itself then and make sure that you have enough cushion built into it to manage any risk that might be associated with working with someone that you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the things? Obviously, the COVID hit, that was out of your control. That had both a positive, but seemingly a negative, but also a positive impact in the sense that it got you thinking about other businesses. What were some of the obstacles that have come up that you weren't anticipating that have been challenging to you?
I think COVID was definitely, it was by far the biggest. And,
Yeah.
and there's nothing that's even compares to it. And it was big for us because it just took up the work that we thought that we had to start the business with was just pushed. It was delayed.
Yes.
And then our business development efforts in the new markets was just shut down. I mean, you're in sales, you know how hard it is to sell people on things under normal conditions.
Yep.
Well, put COVID in the middle of it and then go try and do it. Like it's really tough. And we're still dealing with that right now.
Yep.
So it was by and far like the biggest thing that we had to deal with. The biggest challenge was starting a business with a plan to do a certain amount of work that it wasn't there when we thought it would be. Our volume was low at the beginning, and it's building to where we want it to and where it should have been, but there was a long delay to get there.
Yep. Okay. As you take a look back, and again, you're only 2 years in, so I mean, perhaps we'll do a series of these interviews. It's funny. I think about I don't know if you ever remember the British documentary 7 Up and 14 Up, where they took a bunch of kids when they were 7 years old, and they did interviews with them, and then they did them every 7 years. So it would be interesting perhaps to do a series of interviews as you build this business. But
okay.
as you look back, what would you have done differently, if anything? And again, you're only 2 years in, but what would you have done differently if you had to do it all over again?
I think that I don't know that I would have done anything differently, but I think now I know to think differently. So that's been the biggest change, is that when I'm thinking strategically or thinking about opportunities or thinking about projects, before we started this business, I did not respect and understand the nuance and the ambiguity and the variance and how different things could be from the plan in this space. And so now when we look at things and we're evaluating, any major opportunity, we're evaluating a project, we're evaluating a market, we're evaluating a new client, the thinking's a lot broader. And not that it's not useful. In fact, it's more useful, because I think before, at the beginning of this, we were relying on a false sense of security around an analysis that was flawed, because it wasn't taking into account how different reality can be from the plan.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So you've put all this effort into the plan. Perhaps you have some of your natural ego tied up in the plan.
Yep.
And then reality intersects with the plan. Sometimes people don't embrace reality. They stick with the plan. They try and grind it through, or they bury their heads in the sand. Take us through how you went through the process of understanding, hold on a second, the plan is fine, but the reality is different and I need to adjust. How long did that take you to make that adjustment?
Didn't take long. I mean, maybe that's the beauty of being a startup, is you don't have a long time to screw around or a long time to massage your ego. Like you better find reality fast, and you better stay in touch with it all the time, because if you lose sight of it, stuff goes wrong quickly. And so it maybe the first few months of this, it took a little while, but after that, it was just like, okay, let's get right to it. And so it just happened very quickly after that.
So as you went through the cycles of the business, the more that the cycle was going on, you understood, okay, I see what's happening here, and this is where we need to make the changes.
Yeah. And then actually maybe one of the blessings of COVID was just going through, like everybody else. I mean, the whole world was wondering, like, what's going to happen here?
Yep.
And you had to sort of, there was so much uncertainty around it. And you had to go out and try and figure out, all right, what do I do next? Yeah. And so that thought process and that exercise, you can apply it to anything. And so maybe, that might have been the best thing that came out of COVID, was just being able to look at a really big challenge in a whole bunch of uncertainty and get through it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, right out of the gate, it's in normal times, whatever normal means, it's tough to start a business, and all of a sudden you get something that's unprecedented, and you've got to work through it. It's interesting. So let's talk about that then. As you look at your experience with COVID, and as we're recording this, we're kind of at the back end in California of the COVID crisis. What are 2 or 3 things that you've learned that you're going to take with you in a non-COVID environment?
Number one is to respect the ambiguity and volatility of things, and to really focus on what you really know, and to be real about it, and not to kid yourself that you understand things or that there's certainty in situations that just aren't there.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, is that, that was a big challenge with a whole bunch of uncertainty. And by taking it step by step and going out and getting help and talking to people and being creative about what you do, you can get through it. You can do it. So I think that gives you the confidence when you're faced with something that's big. And I'm sure we're going to have a whole bunch of that down the road that, we could keep going. We can make it.
It's interesting because it takes a certain ego to start your own business. And yet what I've heard throughout our conversation is also a certain sense of humility, in that you've got to reach out to others to help you in the midst of doing that.
You're never I've never been professionally had to be as exposed to other people as I am going through this process. Exposed financially, exposed where people know a lot more about you than they should, exposed in a way where you have to ask for help. It's a challenge. And if you're not humble about it, you can't do it.
So interesting just to think about that degree of balancing ego and humility, and how both are needed in healthy doses if you're going to be successful in doing what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's, you can define an ego so many different ways, but it's really, it's a combination of drive and humility. You have to have a crazy amount of drive to do this because, at the end of the day, it doesn't make rational sense.
What do you mean by that? It doesn't make rational sense?
You could, if someone was just to sit down and analyze the risk of starting the business, especially at the point in the career, I'm in my early 40s. So, I was at the point in my career where I could really start doing well and be at a high level in an organization, make a lot of money, and not really be at personal risk.
Yep.
So it's very easy if you just want to think through this with a sheet of paper of pluses and minuses. How do you get to the logical conclusion that you just risk everything and start a business? You just don't. And so that's what I mean by that.
Yeah, no. So for all of us who've started our own businesses, and for all the people who've benefited from us starting our own businesses, it's good that we do things sometimes that don't make sense.
Yeah.
So as you look to the next 12 months, you have this framework of planning. I really like the what you shared here about this idea of diversification, mobility, and managing risk. As you look to the next 12 months, what are you focused on in the growth of your business?
Well, we're fortunate now. We have a pretty strong backlog and a pretty robust pipeline of opportunities. So that's not going out and finding the work is not the issue for us right now. We are very focused on financing this. So we know that if we go into this undercapitalized and we take on too much, then it's a recipe for failure. So that's something that we think about all the time. The other thing and that's sort of at the top of the list because realistically that has to be. You take that away, the business doesn't go anywhere. But we're also, now that we're a little bit older and we have more people in this business, we're getting very intentional about building our culture, about getting a proper vision out, about explaining our mission and values, and really building a great organization. And so that's something over the next 12 months that we're really going to spend a lot of time on. Yeah, I think is really important.
That's tremendous. So let me just explore a little bit more with you here. What do you focus on to maintain the health of your relationships with your partners in the business?
I think so. We communicate a lot. We don't really hold back. We don't really, it's funny. There's a ton of stress and there's sort of everything's at stake, but at the same time we could sit down and just talk. And there's not, no one's finger pointing or yelling or arguing. We got a problem. We got to take care of it. And so that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing is communicating and then just staying productive and maintaining the trust.
That's excellent. How are you managing yourself? What do you do to manage yourself and the stresses that you're experiencing just individually?
Well, it's hard. um, I try to be healthy, so I try to be as healthy as possible. I work out a lot, meditate. I spend time with my family. I try to read a lot each week, and I just try to do things that sort of keep me aware and grounded and healthy. Because I think if it's very easy to get lured into sleeping 4 nights a week and work 4 hours a night and working 7 days a week and putting everything aside. And while you might have to do that every once in a while, I don't think that's the long game. I think you're just going to break yourself, or you're going to end up making some pretty stupid decisions.
What do you do to keep that long game in mind?
I think all the time about the longer term goal of this.
Okay.
And so it's something I think about every day. I have a picture of what this business looks like down the road.
When you say you have a picture, are you talking about a physical picture or just a picture in your mind?
I have a mental picture. Okay. I have a mental picture of what this business looks like. And I think about it every day.
Can you share with us what that is?
It's a company that people respect. We're an industry leader. It's a place where people want to work. It's an organization that's respected by our customers and our competition. It's an organization that's high performing. So, we're earning returns that are at the top of our industries that we're in. We're well diversified, and we're making a large positive impact in the world. And so that's the business that we see. And that's also part of the vision that, we're communicating to the people that are here. This is what we want to look like. And for us, it's in 2030.
In 2030. So you're sort of, it's the sort of the 10-year vision.
Yeah.
You used the word respect a couple of times there. Can you tell me more about what you mean by that, please?
Well, you'll see that there's companies in any industry, and especially in our industry, where you just see them and they're good. And it's like, that's a great business. That's a great business. They've got a great reputation. They have great people. Man, I really respect what they do. I respect their leadership, and I respect who's there. And so that's what I mean by that. And it's just having that respect. And construction's a big industry, but it's a small world.
Yes.
And people know a lot about the other people in this space, and it's very hard to hide. Yep. And so, we want this organization to be one that when people see it and they think about it, they respect us. They know that we're good, and they also know that this is a great organization.
Excellent. Well, Peter, I really appreciate your time. There's a lot more that we could dive into. I think I've already got my topic for our next conversation, and that's maybe 12, 18 months from now, we can talk about this idea of building culture, because obviously that's a fundamental aspect of a healthy business.
Yeah,
that's excellent. Well, I appreciate you joining us. Let me just ask you this one last thing. What's the best book you've read recently that's been helpful to you?
Oh man, I read a lot. Right now, I'm reading a book about, and it's an older book about, and I'm going to get the guy's name wrong, the founder of Hyundai. Uh-huh. And how everybody knows Hyundai as a car company, but before they were a car company, they were a construction company, and they still are. And it's just an incredible story. The chairman, Jung, is how they refer to him. I don't know his full name.
Chung Young or something like that.
Yeah. He was a guy that grew up in South Korea, and they were very poor, like starving poor. And he built a great organization, and he did it in a way that was about something a lot bigger than just building a business. It was about building that country. It was about elevating the people that he had around him. It was really an incredible story.
That's interesting. And it looks like the book is made in Korea.
There's a few books made in Korea, but there's the one, and I have that, but the one I'm reading right now is his. It's called Born of This Land. Born of This Land. Yeah, it's his autobiography, and it was originally in Korean. I don't know when it was translated into English.
Interesting. Yeah, it's one of those tough to get books. Where did you get it?
Amazon.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. I've got a link right here. Excellent. I will put a link in the show notes to that book then.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. Peter, thank you once again for joining us. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation, and I wish you all the best here in the next year or so.
Thanks, Eric. It was great to see you.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Construction Conclave. If you as a construction leader would like to develop your skills and get involved in a community of like-minded construction professionals who are focused on building healthy teams, profitable projects, and long-term successful businesses, then the Construction Conclave is for you. It's a private, invitation-only group of construction leaders that are focused on developing their leadership skills. We do training every single month online that looks at how to become a better leader in a very practical, straightforward way. We also have other events that build community and camaraderie so that you can associate with others who are interested in developing their skills as leaders. If you'd like more information and to see if you qualify for participating in the conclave, feel free to reach out to me, eric@ericanderton.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and thanks again for listening.